William Hill sponsors IFL TV.
I'm the man to beat Daniel Dubois. You're going to sleep.
This is KUGAN CASSIUS for IFL TV in association with MTK Global. We're in New York. It's fight day. Well, it's sport day, really. Here in New York. Delighted to be joined by John Skipper. Appreciate you having me at your home here, and appreciate your time. How are you, sir?
I'm excellent. So a big day. I'm a Spurs fan. So Champions League final, followed by, I'm a big Anthony Joshua fan, followed by an Anthony Joshua debut in New York City. So a big day in the Big Apple.
Absolutely. It's been a long week here in New York, and I think from a kind of media point of view, it's been a successful week. And from the disruption of what was happening with Gerald Miller to what's happened now, I think the situation was kind of handled in the correct way. Would you agree?
I would agree. Listen, it's unfortunate, of course, with Gerald Miller, and I feel for the guy a little bit. Big opportunity. He's taken responsibility for his mistake. It's too bad. But I think Eddie handled it very well. AJ handled it very well, and respect to Andy Ruiz, who is willing to step in the ring with Anthony Joshua and fight. So credit to him.
I want to start with Anthony Joshua. We know that so far he hasn't committed to a US broadcast deal, and we know that he's been fighting on Dazn as his US broadcaster. But where are you in negotiations to commit Anthony Joshua long-term to Dazn, which I'm assuming is one of your top priorities?
It is a top priority, and it's our expectation that we will do so. We have a great relationship with Anthony. That's primarily through Eddie, Hearn, Simon Denyer, but of course it's a priority for us, and we expect to get that done.
Is that going to be done in the near future, or is that talk still ongoing?
Our expectations will be done in a matter of in this year.
Okay. There was a lot of talk around the Deontay Wilder situation from a few months ago, John, where he obviously reportedly had talks with yourself and obviously his team, Shelley Finkel, Al Heyman, etc. We didn't really hear too much about what happened as in terms of him not accepting a proposed offer from Dazn. Can you tell us anything about why that didn't happen?
Well, I can certainly confirm it's not mysterious.
Yeah.
I did speak to Deontay Wilder. I did meet with Deontay Wilder and Al Heyman and Shelley Finkel, and we had a good discussion. And we clearly have different, in some ways, different business objectives. We don't have different boxing objectives. We want to get Anthony Joshua and Deontay Wilder in the ring. I expect we will at some point. We made an offer, and the guys were respectful about it, but they chose to do a 3-fight deal with Showtime, which I respect the fact they're doing what they believe is the best business for them and the best business for Deontay, and they know that we want to make the fight, and I expect we'll make it at some point. Sooner would be better for fans, I understand, and it's a shame that business gets in the way, because that's what's in the way. No matter what anybody, either fighter says, I don't know Deontay that well, but I believe that he sincerely wants to fight Anthony Joshua, and Anthony Joshua, I know, sincerely wants to fight him.
How hopeful were you before you had that meeting? Were you optimistic that you could kind of reach a deal with Deontay to come and work with Dazn? Were you optimistic beforehand?
Well, I'm an optimistic guy in general, so yes, and I didn't go there with anything except the hope that I would be successful. And I don't know Deontay. I didn't really know Shelley that well. I'm getting to know him. I know Al a little bit, but not well. So I didn't know enough to know, right? When you say was I optimistic, I knew I could go in and do a deal. I knew I had a good hand. We made a very credible offer. They didn't suggest that it wasn't credible or that they weren't excited by it. I think they still like the offer. I think they believe that we will do something that looks very much like what we talked about later on. It'll be somewhat different. It won't be the same.
Around that time also, obviously on our constant updates with Eddie Hearn, he specifically told us that you had kind of had a word in his ear and said, for the time being, while these negotiations are going on, kind of keep quiet and don't kind of rattle their cage, shall we say. Why did you feel that was kind of necessary? Was Eddie Hearn kind of a little bit of a hindrance? Because we know that the back and forth between himself and Shelley Finkel, etc., had been ongoing for such a long time.
Yeah. All of that, mostly, in my opinion, is just a distraction. Eddie Hearn has done great for us, right? He brought Anthony Joshua here to the United States, very important for us. Canelo just fought Danny Jacobs, who Eddie secured for that fight. So, no. Am I happy about any of that? No. Did I believe that doing anything public is particularly helpful? I don't. I don't think you negotiate deals publicly. I don't think name calling, you know, on either side, right? And it's been on both sides. There's been some chatter. It's part of, by the way, it's part of the game of boxing. It's part of the culture of it. I got it. But I'm only interested in making the fight and doing what is good for our business. And by the way, it also needs to be good for the business of the people we're doing business with. So I got that. We got to make it work for them as well. So I was disappointed. Yes, you asked that before. Did I think anything that was public was really a hindrance? Ultimately, these are all serious business people, and the fighters care about being the unified heavyweight champion of the world. So the other stuff is just chatter, and I didn't think it was helpful.
The reason I asked that is, reading between the lines, it just seemed like Shelley Finkel and Deontay Wilder as well seemed to kind of had a reluctance to kind of talk or negotiate with Eddie. Eddie's made it publicly clear that he just, you know, kind of wanted to sit down and discuss the fight. So he himself said that by him removing himself kind of from the situation can only really help that fight happening.
Right. Look, Eddie and I had breakfast this morning. Everything that happens, we talk about, we work on together, and sometimes it's going to be better that Eddie handles something, sometimes it's going to be better that we do it together, and sometimes it might be better for me to try to do it or somebody else. So we're practical guys, and ultimately we want to win, so we figure out the right way to approach something and do it that way.
How would you describe your relationship with Shelley Finkel?
Developing, right? I'd never met Shelley before we walked in to have the first meeting, and that's never good, right? You can do business better with people you know and people you have established trust. So that's what Shelley and I are trying to do now, is let's get some trust, let's get some relationship so we can figure out how to do this.
Deontay Wilder this week has kind of put out two bits of news which don't seem formal because dates and venues haven't been announced, but a few days ago he announced that he will rematch Luis Ortiz in his next fight. He then posted out yesterday and said that as soon as he's fought Luis Ortiz, he will fight Tyson Fury. What does this kind of tell you about the current situation? Where does that leave kind of any potential fight between Joshua and Wilder?
I think, first of all, I think they have credibility. I don't have any first-hand knowledge. So I don't know that there's a fight with Ortiz, but I believe there is. I don't know that there's a fight or two fights with Fury, but I believe it. These things are always, or almost always, I could be wrong, they're almost always malleable, meaning if there is a reason for the parties involved to do things in a different order, they might agree to do them in a different order, though I don't know that to be the case. I'm going to stick to it and keep trying to make it, and these things are just a more complicated schedule that means we had to little harder situation to figure out.
And be a little bit patient at the same time.
Be a little bit patient, right? The only thing that we shouldn't be patient about is there is a dramatic desire to see this fight. That means there is good business to do. Now, everybody might be making a calculation that that business is there to do no matter what, right? And it'll be there to do whether it's 6 months from now or a year from now for 18 months. But we do have a little bit of an obligation to the fans. And by the way, the obligation to the fans is only good for business. So I say that, but I also understand that if we don't have the fans, we're not going to make money. They're not going to subscribe, they're not going to buy a fight, they're not going to watch on television, and we need that to happen.
It's crazy to think that this time last year, to boxing fans, Dazn was kind of an unknown quantity, and to a large degree, no one had heard of Dazn.
Right.
And what's happened over the last kind of 10 months has been quite incredible, really. I mean, the aggressive signings, the kind of level of shows that are being put on. How have you kind of assessed that kind of sort of 10 month period in boxing?
very little gives me more satisfaction than if you ask boxing fans in the United States right now what they think the best boxing proposition here is, they say Dazn, overwhelmingly. So that makes me happy and makes it clear we've made progress on this. We got to make more progress, but we had 1.2 million people watch Canelo fight Danny Jacobs. That's a big audience for boxing fans, and I think we're getting rid of the concern that Dazn, there's not enough people watching, there's no credibility. Do they have the backing to sort of keep at it? Will they be here 2 years from now? I think the answer is yes, 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 and yes. And to be fair to Deontay Wilder and Shelley Finkel asked me that question. Tell me about your platform, and they may feel they want to see a little more before they decide it's the right place for Deontay to fight. And we're prepared to show a little more, including tonight, including a week from tonight when we have Gennady Golovkin returning to fight. So I think we're pretty proud of what we got.
We already kind of see the kind of huge financial investment that's gone into the likes of Canelo and everyone else, and the money kind of that seems to have gone in over the last 10 months. And I suppose a common cynic would think, at what point do Dazn turn around and say, hang on, we want a little bit back now? And how deep are those pockets? That's a common thing that people kind of think. So how would you kind of respond to that?
Look, we haven't done anything that doesn't make financial sense, right? We have a different business model, which is subscriptions. And when people come on and subscribe, there's a lifetime value to that sub. That's a more valuable purchase than a pay-per-view purchase. That's why we're going to be able to do what we're doing. We're fully committed. The owner is fully committed, and we don't expect, right now we're very happy with where we are.
We know you've made kind of a heavy ploy on the fact that pay-per-view's dead. A lot of your advertising is kind of centered around the fact that pay-per-view is yesterday's news. This is kind of the future. Can you sort of categorically say that Dazn will never enter the pay-per-view market in boxing?
Look, I've never postured too much about, oh my gosh, we're going to kill pay-per-view. What I believe is that we have a superior business model, and ultimately that model is going to prevail. And it will also be better for boxing fans. I very seldom categorically say I won't do anything, because there's really very little upside. If I say it and I never do it, I don't get much credit for it. If I say it, it inhibits what moves I can make. So I'm not giving you a hint that, yeah, we had planned to secretly do one a year from now. We do not expect to. We expect to continue on our plan, but there'd be very little reason for me to shut off all options in the future.
No, absolutely.
And some of that is public advertising and posturing. Everybody loves a disruptor, a renegade, somebody with a little swagger, that we're the new guys in town. So we show a little of that, but we don't need to get carried away.
Another common thing that always seems to prop up, and I've spoken to some of your guys like Joe Markowski about this in the past, and he's remained coy. Maybe you can kind of shed more light on this, John. Dazn coming to the UK and specifically entering the boxing market is kind of, I don't think that's people are talking about it because they have any kind of knowledge. They're kind of just speculating that eventually Dazn would enter the UK market. Can you make any comment on if that is a possibility in the near future?
We don't have any definitive plans, so the near future is unlikely. But we're a London-based company. We got a big bet on boxing in the United States. We see what it can do for a subscription service. We're going to want to be in the UK. We just, again, it's like the Wilder-Joshua fight. Got to be a little patient. Got to wait for the right time when we can make the appropriate moves and launch a service. We expect to do so.
Obviously, you have a relationship with Sky Sports in the UK, and when I've spoken to Adam Smith from Sky Sports before about it, and it's not really a thing at the moment, so it's kind of just probably people speculating and just kind of throwing the question out there. But if, for example, if Dazn were to come to the UK, is it a case of kind of working alongside Sky Sports, or would they technically be a rival? I know it's a difficult question to answer because this is kind of...
Yeah. In fact, it's impossible to answer, but you're still asking the right thing, right? We have a good relationship with Sky. We work with them in Italy. I know all the NBC Comcast people. We generally, our hope is to be good partners with people, be collegial, but we're also going to be competitive. So we'll have to figure out the right thing for us to do. Sky, which is now, of course, part of NBC, Comcast has to figure out the right thing to do. But we're pretty friendly guys, and the hope would be that we can do something that works for all of us and works for fans at the same time.
We know you've got strong, obviously, ties with ESPN. How is kind of your relationship with ESPN since you've left? Because obviously they look after Tyson Fury, and I'm assuming if that fight was to be seriously talked about at some point, your input in that would be crucial.
We have talked about it, and it would be a good fight. Fans would like that fight. They'd love it in the UK. Increasingly, as Fury and Joshua get more profile here, they'll love the fight here. I spent a long time at ESPN. I love my time there. I love my old colleagues there. I'm in touch with some of them. Burke Magnus is the guy who does the programming there. I'm friends with Bob Arum and Todd, so there are ways to get that done as well and work with ESPN.
Just want to talk to you about your pricing when for the subscription. Obviously, when you first started, it was a flat $9.99, and then obviously that changed to kind of benefit sports fans more so by getting them to commit for the whole year, which I think works out around $100. Yeah, $100.
$8.33 on average a month.
$8. So was that kind of always the plan to kind of, the introductory offer was to remain at just under $10, and then you was always going to eventually move to this new plan?
No, the plan was to be at a free trial, a $9.99 subscription per month. But particularly when you're doing something new, and we are doing something new, you have to adapt to circumstances. We saw a lot of fans come in for Canelo fielding. Many of them paid no money and got to watch a fight. We spent some time talking to them, and we realized these people would have paid for this fight, and we wouldn't have seen any diminution in the number of people who subscribed. So we eliminated the free trial. In fact, we raised the price to $19.95, and we saw more people come for the Canelo-Jacobs fight. So we adapted to the fact that we didn't need to have a free trial for these big fights. There is some pricing elasticity beyond $99, and so we went to $19.99. But we won't, a big problem, the biggest problem you have, structural problem you have in a subscription service is churn, right? People come in for a month, they leave, they come back for a month. We want people to commit to a year. The more months you stay in any period of time, the more likely you are to stay longer. So we would just want to give people a great deal. It's $100. It's the same as 5 months. So if you're going to watch 3 Canelo fights in a year, and a Golovkin fight, and a Joshua fight, and a Callum Smith fight, Danny Jacobs fight, you're going to quickly add up and figure $100 is the way to go, and that's what we want to have happen.
Is that plan likely to change after a certain period of time, or is that kind of how it's set?
As soon as I can learn something smarter, I'll change it. Right now, that's the smartest thing I can think of.
John, I'm not expecting you to obviously give me specific figures, but subscriber base for Dazn at the moment, are you satisfied with where you are at the moment?
Well, you know, you never want to say you're satisfied. I'd like to have another one. Did you subscribe yet? I hope you subscribe and tell all your friends. Where we are now is quite an accomplishment. I mean, we are going to emerge, I think, as a significant player in this country with the largest aggregator of subscriptions around the world. So we're happy with where we are. We'd like to be further. No, I won't tell you, unfortunately, how many subs we have. At some point, we'll talk about how many subs we have, because we'll need to. But I'd like to be a little further along first.
Can you tell us kind of sort of a percentage boost from the Canelo fights? Because they must have obviously attracted a huge boost in your subscribers from the Rocky Fielding fight back in December, and also the Danny Jacobs fight recently.
The subscriptions we have are overwhelmingly generated by those 2 fights, overwhelmingly. We did better on the second fight than the first fight. We think we'll do pretty well tonight. We'll do pretty well next week, and then we've got some things we hope will happen in the fall that we think will vault us even further.
The signings you've made under Dazn I mean, it has been phenomenal. The likes of Usyk and Golovkin, Canelo, these guys.
Haney, very
yeah,
recently.
Devin Haney, absolutely.
We think this kid Ryan Garcia is going to be a big-time fighter.
Okay, but how aggressive do you go now? You've kind of made your dent with the signings you've made, but do you kind of keep at the same pace, and you literally want, you know, a roster of literally the top pound for pound fighters under the zone.
Our ambition level is high, and we continue to be active at talking to fighters, and we were not finished yet.
How much of, like I said, with these signings is down to kind of the relationship again with Eddie Hearn, because obviously you're working with Matchroom as well as Golden Boy and also Triple G Promotions now, but specifically with Eddie Hearn, how much kind of has a say on the signings coming to the zone, even if they're not for Matchroom? How much do you liaise with him on that?
Nothing that we do. Eddie knows everything we're doing, and he and I talk about it. Simon and I talk about it, and we expect to continue doing that. We're just pragmatic, right? What we want is to aggregate. We want to be the preeminent destination for boxing fans in this country. In order to do that, we have to have the fighters and the fights they want to see, and have more of them than anybody else. That's our ambition. I think we're in a good position. Are we clearly in a preeminent position? I'm not sure we are yet, and that's where we want to be.
Not too long to go, John.
Do I look like I'm getting tired?
No.
Would you call this the sixth round or the ninth round?
This is the third,
my hands are dropping.
This is the third round, all right?
Okay.
So
my hands are already dropping.
Really. I spoke to Joe about this last week, because there were some rumours going around that Dazn was being sold, etc., and it was getting confused with the split from Perform Group.
Right.
Can you talk to me a little bit about that, and does that have kind of any impact on the future of Dazn?
No, Dazn is not going to be sold anytime in the near future. The Perform assets, which are some of the business-to-business assets, data analytics, video streaming services for betting parlors, we sold that because we wanted we sold a majority of that. We wanted to be able to concentrate on Dazn. We think Dazn is the high-growth business. It also provided us some cash to keep doing what we're doing around the world. We've recently launched in Brazil, and we launched not long ago in Spain. So no, there's no imminent change for Dazn. And that is our core business now.
When Dazn first launched, and over kind of a 4 or 5 month period, there was people in the UK felt that there was a neglect towards the UK shows because Matchroom were putting more of an emphasis on the Dazn shows and the US market, because you're starting out, and but there seemed to be a neglect going on, and that was obviously, I've spoken to Eddie Hearn and Adam Smith about this over a few months ago, but can you make any kind of comment on that, on like Eddie Hearn's kind of emphasis to kind of push the best shows possible for the US market as well as the UK market?
I'm not sure I know enough about the specific cards in the UK or to know exactly. Here's what I think. I think Eddie is trying very hard to balance and do a good job both places, right? Maybe people in England were mad when the Beatles came to the United States, but ultimately you got to be in the United States if you're going to have a big business. Eddie wants to operate in the United States as well as the UK. It requires you to sort of think about how you balance, doing a good job there. As far as I know, they're putting on great fights. They're still filling up stadiums around the country. I had coffee with Barney Francis at Sky while he was here this week. They're happy with what's going on. So, and of course, people, Anthony Joshua's fighting in the United States today. I would assume there are a lot of English people in town. I'm sure they feel a certain loyalty and ownership, and they love Anthony Joshua. They'd love to see him fighting tonight in the UK. They hate to share him in a way, although they seem pretty happy this week. But that's inevitably what has to happen if you're trying to grow your business. Yeah,
no, I think obviously the original date for Anthony Joshua was the 13th of April. It was set for Wembley, and I think everyone was kind of gearing up for a huge fight there. And it was when that was taken away, it was like, now he's fighting in the US, and we lost Joshua to the US, now he's the only fighting. But I think Joshua's even come out and said his next fight will more than likely be back in the UK. So,
and look, Anthony Joshua should be one of the top 10 best known, beloved athletes in the world. He's got everything, right? He's got the looks, he's got the charisma, he's got the brains, he's got the skill. He should be Muhammad Ali. And you're going to have to conquer the United States. Again, I'll use that terrible Beatle analogy. The Beatles came to the United States because they wanted to be the biggest stars in the world, and it worked. Maybe it'll work for Anthony Joshua.
Okay, John, listen, I appreciate your time. We know the Champions League football is going to commence shortly.
Yes.
I don't share your sentiment with Tottenham winning because I'm an Arsenal fan, so I'm a Liverpool fan for the day.
Okay, well, I appreciate that. I can understand that. All right, it's been a pleasure, by the way.
Yeah,
Thank
absolutely appreciate your time, yeah. I think it's taken me 4 months, but with your team, we got it done.
Okay, it's a tough team.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
a tough team.
Absolutely. There could be a boy band standing there right now.
Yeah, they look kind of like the Beatles.
NSYNC. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
John, thank you very much.
All right, thank you. That was great.
Cool.
William Hill sponsors IFL TV.
I'm the man to beat Daniel Dubois. We're going to sleep.